thanks for joining us. And again, apologies for the technical issues. A lot of them weren't our fault. We had some issues with Twitter and their production system, and unfortunately, I think it was a network-wide fault. So we've had to think on our feet, and we're now over here on Telegram, and so hopefully you guys can hear us. And if not, there'll be a recording of this available for you later on, and you can watch it back at your leisure. So joining us today, we have obviously Steve from our team at DevvE, the head of comms, and you guys are all familiar with Steve. And we also have, and we're very lucky to have Jeff from the Taunt Network, who is also here to obviously talk about all things Taunt, but he's going to provide some insight and answer any questions that you guys have on Taunt, why it's such an amazing opportunity, and potentially share a few little tidbits that you guys may or may not have heard. So we're pretty excited to have you here, Jeff, and thanks for making the time to come and have a chat.
Yeah, no worries. I'm glad to be here. I appreciate you guys kind of taking the time and, kicking off the partnership and getting to know the DevvE community a little bit more. Has been a priority of Battle World, since the beginning. We haven't had a chance to do this. We've had a rash of announcements right in the last week or so, but hopefully we can do a couple more of these over the next few weeks and get to know each other a little bit better.
Yeah, amazing. And again, always welcome. I think there's so much to unpack on the Taunt side. I mean, you guys are doing a lot. You've got some, really exciting news and some great things in the pipeline. But more importantly, what I really want to get under the hood of is actually, the platform, because there's a lot there, right? There's more than just, the gameplay. There's the live streaming. There's the value enablement. You're approaching things from a completely different perspective, which I think is, A, fantastic, and B, like such a great market opportunity. Can you maybe just give us an overview? Is that even possible to give us a 10-second tour?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would be great for, the DevvE community to really understand where we kind of started. So, a couple years ago, we started our game development studio, Taunt Gaming, which was really under the guise, and I'll give you the quick, 2-second version of it around this thesis that live streaming in general hadn't been integrated yet into actual gameplay and game design as almost like a new feature set, or in the game design world, like a player role in essence. So if you think about how like live streaming from gaming specific content usually kind of comes up, it's really about, a game like League of Legends gets really big and then live streaming gets stacked on top of it, whether that's esports or just content creation or whatever. Same thing with Fortnite, right? Fortnite as a game gets really big, and then, a bunch of content creators hop on and create content on top. But in general, our initial thesis was, well, what if we started making games that like kind of took all of that live streaming and all the cool things about live streaming and the social piece of it, the community building piece of it, and started to think about it at the game design level. So when we started making the game, right? Because then it opens up, you'll hear me talk about alternative monetization models. It then starts, the game business is a very difficult business in general, but then what ends up happening is, you start to think you have alternative monetization models that you can start to build off of immediately because you're thinking about those things up front. Live streaming as a silo is very difficult, when you think about it, to make money as well, both for content creators and game developers. Generally speaking, most game developers just use it as a marketing tool to some degree. But if you start to think about it from at the game design level, then you can start to think about, okay, can I build these functions into the game and then monetize it like you would a normal game?
I'd just like to ask if everybody out there can hear us, all our sound levels are okay. There are a few people that seem to be having a bit of trouble entering the stream at the moment. We do have quite a few people watching us at the moment, so maybe if you try just refreshing your apps, closing Telegram and popping back into the channel, you might be able to see us then.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, it seems so logical that you would start from that point of view, though, Jeff, because again, live streaming is now it's such an integral part of the game ecosystem and gameplay and everything else. You see people streaming games all the time. Consumable content, on YouTube and multiple channels is how it attracts, a lot of different people. But from a monetization point of view, why has nobody tried to do this before? Why do you think you guys are kind of breaking
That's
new ground?
that's a great question. So, when our team, which has some of us, most of us come from AAA developers, in terms of that, EA, Amazon, Microsoft, that kind of core group. And then a lot of us also have a wagering background as well, licensed wagering background. A lot of us kind of came together on kind of the esports betting, through the esports betting world in general. But when you start to think about why no one has actually tried this, is actually a really interesting question. I'd say 70, 80% of the game developers worldwide are out of the United States, where, wagering in general just was legalized not too long ago. Gaming itself is a very young industry in general as well. Like, this might date me a little bit, but my generation or my age group is probably the first that grew up with, like, the old Nintendo, 8-bit Nintendo, right, in general.
Yeah. Look, I grew up with an Atari.
Right. So as we're getting into kind of, as we're getting older and we're looking, at video games more as a business than more of a, as a pastime, my generation is probably the first to really embrace video games as, like, a normal thing. I mean, I tell my mom all the time, who's, in her 70s, what we do for a living and what we're doing, and it just boggles her mind, right? And so, again, like, because of, you combine the kind of the nascent and the young industry of video gaming, and then the very, very young in America, really, or, the very young betting world, that's why it's hard to find a game developer who kind of looks at it like that. It's been so taboo, right? In the United States. Now in the EU, it's, gambling in general is much more developed, but still the gaming side hasn't caught up yet necessarily as well, where people are thinking about, games as a potential wagering product. So I think over the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to see some significant growth, and in both betting products coming out of games. And I think people are going to start to figure out what we look at, why games are such a good vehicle for wagering, is it never has to be turned off. Right. So, like, when you start to think about that, like, you never have to turn it off. There's these rabid communities around. I don't think anybody's really found, a way to kind of combine that. Like I said, at the game design level, League of Legends, Dota, CSGO, they find a way to do that on a traditional kind of sports betting, esports level. But I think when people start to find that secret sauce and see that, there's a ton of users there, a ton of community there, and it never has to be turned off, a lot more developers will start to look at it like we're looking at it.
And also,
Yeah,
just,
and
just
it is
onto
mind-blowing.
that, I'll just add on to that you don't have to look any further than sort of Kick recently, and the gambling streams that they have on there. The gambling live streaming industry in general is taking off right now. But we're stuck with very quite simple products at the moment. People, they love video games, and there's so much more for them to interact with. So just the ability to offer these cooler products that they can interact on the Gamblefy sort of thing is actually pretty cool. I really like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And is technology a limiting factor, Jeff? Is that something that has also, obviously it's evolving at the same time, but has there been a kind of, I don't know, a bandwidth limit or a limit in terms of being able to fulfill this?
Yeah, I think for us, especially, the other thing, I'm sure we'll get into deeper in this conversation, is around this idea of how the blockchain integrates into all of this, and player-owned assets and things like that. As we started our company, at the time, again, we're talking 2022, 2023 stage, everybody's trying to kind of figure out how to make the blockchain pieces work within gaming and even live streaming, right? All of that's happening in real time, right? And so if you start to think about the technical challenges from 2 years ago, 3 years ago, which a lot have been, made significant strides at, it was almost impossible to try and do all of this stuff on chain. Doesn't matter what chain you're on, right? It's almost impossible to do kind of real-time finality, kind of, live streaming, all of that stuff kind of facilitated by the blockchain. Now, this is why our partnership with DevvE is very, very exciting for me, is because of the speed of the chain in general. We believe DevvE is the best option for what we're trying to do long term. There's no other blockchain that even comes close, right? I think there was a really popular Twitter post that came out, I think it was like last week or something, around the fastest blockchains in terms of transactions, and once DevvE gets up and running, we believe that's going to smoke everything that's on that list by a wide margin. And that's the piece where all of the long-term interactive pieces, where think about all the most creative game developers in the world, and then turn streams into a kind of a secondary arm of their games, whether through social mechanisms, play to earn mechanisms, gamify mechanisms, all of that can be actually built into the game and then live streamed straight from the game. There's some really cool things there that we believe DevvE is the best position from a blockchain perspective to support.
And just from an open door point of view, I mean, there are a lot of people trying to get into this. There are a lot of people looking at market leaders like yourself. There's a lot of people who, they don't want to be the first movers potentially, but, from conversations we've had with gaming studios and others, they're all exploring or actively exploring ways that they can monetize, retired content or, other ways that they can kind of breathe new life and new value into some of the gaming IP that they own. And we see what you're doing as just such a brilliant tool for that, to bring the opportunity to these kind of content producers that they've never seen before in a way that they can, remonetize, re-enable the enthusiasm with very little cost on their side at all. So, it's all win-win.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we like to tout, and again, which really got us into kind of this setup is there's something to the effect of 35 billion hours of unmonetized gaming content out in the world. And so when you start to, and that's just on YouTube in general, right? When you start to think about it in that form or fashion and how hard it is for like content creators and developers to monetize their gaming content from a streaming perspective, it becomes very, very exciting for people to say, okay, well, how can we do that, right? Because really the only ways to monetize straight, if you're just a content creator, is sponsorships, a little bit of money, right, from ads in the platform. It's very, very difficult to do anything with that. Now, flip that around, and if you're a content creator, now you can make, you can do really cool things as like live prediction contests on live content, right? Maybe you can buy, an NFT that will give you a multiplier on the prediction contest. So it's almost like an in-app purchase through your stream. All of those things are possible, and it could be made possible through like blockchain technology and things like that. And, that's the exciting part for us is like, we have this whole other like ocean that hasn't been touched yet for monetization, but the content pipeline and the content engine is so deep and strong that, we only have to be very, very, we have to be a small percentage successful, and it's going to be a huge win for everybody in the ecosystem.
Exactly. I mean, for every PewDiePie, right, there's 1,000 great content creators out there that are not kind of recognizing the value of what they're doing and how they're kind of producing this content. And for them, the opportunity is vast. But more importantly, the opportunity for new players to enter the market. Because what I think this unlocks is, as you said, kind of new industries, new opportunities, new ways for people to literally make money from some of these things, both from a Gamify point of view, but from a wider kind of prediction market and other. From a data point of view, I think there's a huge amount you could do, in around that. But, again, without getting off topic, I think to wheel it back a little bit, maybe we could talk a little bit about Battle World and kind of what you guys are doing there.
Yeah, absolutely. So Battle World, which is our, again, a proof of concept game for the Taunt network and its tool sets. The idea around Battle World initially was, and it's actually a really good story. One of our other co-founders is one of the largest Zed-Run holders at the time when we decided to kind of start the studio. And Zed-Run itself, at its height, it was a pretty popular, and still is, relatively popular, what we call a game. But kind of the hook for Zed-Run isn't necessarily the actual gameplay, right? It's like the live viewing experience and the excitement of the races. And so, what we decided to do was like think about, a game that we could kind of create that anybody could sit down and understand what's going on. So my biggest problem, and I'm in this every single day, right, is that, in a Dota 2 game, like if you're not don't know what's going on or you're not in there every day, it's very hard to understand and watch, and nobody would do it for fun. Like you get there and you wouldn't know what's going on, and like then the engagement's tough, and you have to spend a lot of time and effort to ingrain yourself in that community and go, right? But like what we're looking for is to create a game where everybody, kind of knows what's going on. It's fast, it's exciting, it's, it's easy to understand. And if you think about like a fight, the great part of a fight, is that there's a beginning, there's an interim, and there's a fight, and then there's an end. And you don't need some, like, you don't spend hours and hours and hours of understanding what's going on, right? You can follow, a health bar and it goes down, and all of those things, and it's really, really easy to, kind of understand from that standpoint. And so we decided to take those concepts that we liked around Zed Run, put them towards a fighting game because of the fighting game, a lot from a game design perspective allows us to add a bunch more different things than what can happen in Zed Run, right? Which, we can do things like weight classes, we can do things like weapons, we can do things like special maneuvers. All that doesn't work in the context of Zed Run, but we could add into context of a fighting game. So that's where we kind of started, and then this component again of a player role for the viewer, right? What does that mean? Well, everybody's going to be watching these matches, and how can that player kind of affect the gameplay, in real time? And that's how we kind of combined everything into this game called Battle World, where basically all the what we call Acolyte Warriors are NFTs. So they're all unique from a rarity and look perspective. We have 5 different races within the game that all have their own special, I would say powers, but attributes that are advantages to those races and weaknesses. And then within each of those races, there's what we call archetypes. So they one's are very good at punching, one's very good at kicking, some are good at defense, right? And so really this game is strategy and discovery. So you're trying to figure out what your NFTs are really good at, what their races are really good at. And then you end up taking them, training them, and putting them into tournaments, and then hopefully your fighter's winning and you're winning prizing and things like that.
So I think that's probably a good time to jump in there. We have some community questions around Battle World, so we'll get you to answer some of those. So we've got the first one here is, what is the functionality of assets like Skull Pass and Golden Gloves?
Mm-hmm. So that's a great question. So our Skull Pass was actually our Genesis Skull Pass. So that was our first asset that generated, it's basically a founder's pass, right? And so basically the Skull Passes forever will have special and unique benefits and attributes associated with them. The first real push, which you'll see for the Skull Pass utility, will become with our airdrop program that we're going to announce soon. But in general, the Skull Pass holders will get the most amount of our benefits around the airdrop program. Then moving forward into when we get into our seasons and things like that over the back half of this year, they'll have exclusive access to tournaments, exclusive access to specific NFT drops, things like that, where we really want to show those first initial community members significant value out of that. So just stay tuned a little bit, be a little bit more patient with us, but I'll say this, the Skull Passes will be a major benefit for the airdrop program, bar none, probably the biggest benefit. So there's a little hint and tidbit for you guys. The Golden Gloves Pass was actually a free mint that we did as part of the Magic Eden Polygon Launchpad launch we did back in, I think, early 2023. So it was a free mint, minted out in, I think, 3 seconds. It's super popular. It'll give you access to these, we did 3 specific tournaments, which we'll hold by the end of this year, and with real life benefits to kind of meet some of our MMA combat sports stars that are signed into the game. So that we'll continue to hold those. But those in general will also be part of the airdrop in the short term as part of significant benefits for participating and holding our assets. Across the board, all of our assets will have some meaningful play into our airdrop program, and then into the back half of our tournament schedule in 2024. So I would continue to kind of check in with us and make sure you're participating, follow us in the Discord, Twitter, all that stuff as we start to roll that program out. Airdrop program details will come out relatively quickly here in the next couple of weeks. So there should be more to come on that.
That's cool. The airdrop program, everybody loves an airdrop. So can you maybe just take that a little bit further? And so one of the things that I've noticed, that everybody knows play to earn in the blockchain space. But what you guys do, which is a little bit different, is the watch to earn and the engage to earn, and some little different things that the other people aren't quite doing. Can you maybe explain for someone who isn't a content creator or a game developer, how might they get involved in the Taunt network and benefit from all your technology?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. So we came up with this concept, and again, it's kind of a derivative of the live streaming and the benefits and the value of live streaming. Well, back when we started the game, right, Bored Apes were $400,000, NFTs were going crazy, all this other stuff, right? The biggest problem and it's still the same. One of the few problems that is still very difficult to solve in Web3 blockchain space is user acquisition, right? And so when you start to think about, okay, I want to get thousands of players into our game, how can we do that? Well, even asking $400,000 is a lot of money, obviously. Even asking somebody to spend $200 on an NFT asset to try and play a game isn't necessarily reasonable. When you start to think about comparatively, if we're being honest, Call of Duty's, $80, right? And so the AAA game's $80. So we started to think about, okay, again, how can we attract people into our ecosystem really quickly? And we were like, okay, live streaming, that's it. We'll take a traditional AAA developer, marketing standpoint on this, and we'll use the live stream to get people in. And so to kind of dive back into the vision of what we're doing on that side is, the live streaming portion, and what we're using with what we call our Taunt Live platform is you're coming in and we're running what we call free-to-play prediction contests on top of our battles in our brawls. And so what's happening there is people can just come in. There's no commitment. You don't have to buy an NFT. You don't have to do anything. You can get in, and it's, will Jeff's fighter beat Steven's fighter in 1 round or less? Yes or no? Get it right, you get points. You move up a leaderboard. Get it wrong, you move down the leaderboard. Right? And so when you start to think about it from that perspective and why we did it, it's really just to acquire more users faster, right? To build our community faster, to build other game communities faster, because now there is no monetary wall blocking from somebody joining on. It's fun. It's exciting. You get to learn about the game and the ecosystem faster, and you're ingraining yourself. And then hopefully when you feel more comfortable, then you can jump into the game, make an investment in, one of the NFT assets if that's what you want to do, and start playing the game outright. If you never want to play the game, which there's a lot of people obviously in the crypto world who don't have the time or the energy to invest in, playing a game full, great. Maybe you can come in and win some prizes for free on these prediction contests, speculative, whatever you want to do, and then kind of pop back out. But our goal is to start running these tournaments 24/7. So there's always something going on in the Battle World ecosystem, both on the tournament side, but then more importantly on the watch and earn side. And we're running these events the whole time, and people are coming in waves. And again, trying to take advantage of what we were talking about earlier is video games never have to be turned off, right? And so let it go, let it run, and let people come in at all times, all locales, all time zones, all in all through that process.
From a licensing point of view, I know that, Steve, you're Australian, I'm Australian. We'd be very familiar with the kind of in-venue entertainment setups and systems that, we would find in kind of pubs and other venues in Australia, where you can kind of gamble on, digital events, or from a passive thing, you can sit back and watch these kind of prediction-based events. But there's very limited content there, right? It's incredibly, it's popular, but it's really limited. I mean, is this something that you guys are looking at, or is that something because that's a huge market opportunity, surely? So in-venue entertainment, I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. So on our site and things like that, we're not actually going to take bets ourselves. It's all going to be free to play and things like that within the context of the game. But you kind of nailed it, a long-term strategy on the head, Dav. And right now is, we've been building this ecosystem for 2 years with the understanding that we have a 24/7 content pipeline, right, of content that could potentially be wagered on. And so right now we're working on, and which we'll have some announcements in the next couple of weeks to a month as well, around wagering partners who will take our Battle World content and put them, like you said, in real life casinos. And they can take wagers on them and things like that, right? And so we look at it very similarly to how the NBA, the NFL, MLB does kind of their betting, where we're just a content provider, right, and a data provider, and we'll take that and we'll sell that off to people who potentially want to take that and monetize against that, and then we take a rev share on that or whatever. But we're not actually taking the bets. We don't have to worry about licensing. We don't have to do any of that stuff. It's very cumbersome, as you guys know, and what you've done on the podcast.
Yeah. But I mean, on top of that, you're adding out of home, right? So on top of that, you've got the monetization of ad revenue. So you could literally you can have a Super Bowl in every venue effectively. If you've got major events coming up, or tournament schedules, or content that people are really waiting for. I imagine do something around the election, do something around all of that.
Absolutely. And then the hope is it's almost like that flywheel effect, right? People come in from out of home into our ecosystems, find DevvE, they find Battle World, they find the Taunt coin, they're cool, and there's this nice cross-pollination, and it's vice versa, right? Think about a world where Battle World starts to grow, and we're on chain and all of that's working. And then, we've had some of these types of conversations before, but like, just think if Conor McGregor's fighting Floyd Mayweather at the MGM Grand, right? That's happening, but then the version of that's happening on Battle World as well, where people can bet on it during the whole week. It's just such a great way to combine the digital and physical worlds together. And again, the key to all of this is transparency, which is very difficult to have without blockchain technology, which is another thing that I think we'll probably end up getting, talking about to some degree, and the speed to make this all happen if we're very concerned about that transparency. And so, without the DevvE blockchain, it's very, very difficult right now with the other technical options out there to make that go, right? And so that's the piece where I think, once, we can get the full power of the partnership in, and then pulling in, physical location partners, online casino partners, and all this other stuff, contextually, that then we can take full advantage of all of those culturally relevant things like live boxing matches, live UFC, WWE type things, like, and all of that can kind of tie together.
Yeah, amazing. I know latency is a huge problem. Sorry, go, Steve.
No,
Yes.
I'd just like to take you back to something you said just earlier before about the 24/7 gaming and just sort of the UGC, the user-generated content that opportunity that provides. Can you just maybe give an example of, for example, maybe in the future, the players were able to actually control their characters in Battle World?
Yeah.
Just what's the potential about this from, that 24/7 interactive game that everybody can come on the live stream and play it all at once? What's the sort of some thoughts about that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Steve. So initially, and again, I think there's the two biggest problems that we have, and they kind of tie together, right? In Web3 gaming, and you talk to any game developer in the world, it's the same problems, right? It's user acquisition and it's distribution, right? So those are the two issues, and they kind of go hand in hand. I think from our perspective, we made a bet early on that, like, for example, Steam and Epic would eventually catch up to Web3 a little bit faster than we thought they would, and a little bit easier, right? And so we do have a full PC build that's actually done, right? Then you start to think about mobile, same thing. We thought Apple and Google, in theory, would actually be a little bit more accommodating. I think Google's done a little bit better than Apple has on the Web3 side and the blockchain side. But in general, we thought, it's 2-3 years later, this, in theory, large, if you don't want, massive probably isn't the right word, but high monetizing audience that's sitting there that they could take advantage of. But they haven't necessarily yet. So if you start to think about publishing and on any of these major platforms, it's an uphill battle unless you have, you're a Zynga, right, that already has a relationship, or you're a large developer that can fight that battle, right? So we early on we made a decision to kind of hopefully that they would catch up. It hasn't come to fruition necessarily quite yet. But because of the benefit to that is we actually have 3 different versions of the game that are ready to be released. We have our full AI-based Zenrun-like version. That's the version that we have out in the ecosystem now. We have a hybrid game version, which is basically limited player control, which I believe is the best for the Web3 native crypto audience, which is basically an AI controls all the kind of the punch kicking movements, all that, and you strategically can deploy special moves, combos, and finishers with one button click. So it's it's more of a strategy, a real-time strategy than anything else. And then we have a full control game, very similar to Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat version. So we have those 3 versions actually ready for the world to kind of see, and we'll release in some kind of cadence over the next 6 months or so. But kind of to answer your question, yeah, I mean we're looking at like, okay, because of these kind of more distribution platform issues, we have this really robust, almost, user journey kind of game test we can roll out over the next 6 months and find out where it really resonates with, the community and what they really want to play and what version eventually becomes like our main version, right? Mm-hmm. Because I think all 3 will play into how you can earn tokens and, and earn in-game items and things like that. I just think there will be one version of those 3 that will actually be the main version that everybody kind of congregates around, and that's like our true community version. But it'll be exciting to see which one wins out at that point.
So I believe your plans are eventually to totally decentralize Battle World, that it's all going to be powered by the Taunt token in the future. So
Yeah.
that's really sort of going to lean into that, isn't it? You know, the community plays is...
Absolutely, and our idea is to hopefully, you know, after the next 3 to 6 months, get through, you know, a couple of these major items, but then start to think about, okay, how can we let the community creativity take Taunt Battle and run with it, right? So what do we need to invest in from a user-generated tool side to let our community create their own fighters, right? What can we do to make sure the economy can sustain itself through that, and then, you know, how can users totally benefit from that to some degree, and people who are investing their time. All of that is the next phase of what we're trying to do with Battle Road, because I mean, I think you guys know this. I think somebody had actually asked a question about, like, you know, how many fighters are in the game or something like that. We have 2,500 fighters right now, right? Which is by far right now, unique fighters is the biggest fighting game in the history of the world. Like, nobody has 2,500 unique fighters, right? And so obviously we've built our own tools to help facilitate that, but it's a very cumbersome process when you start to think about it. I want to give them unique moves. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want these details in. And so when we get to a world where it's fully decentralized and people can actually take that, run with it, build it themselves, we've given them the tools to easily do that. And it's almost like create your own player mode, right? In like NBA 2K or whatever, right? And people can actually just mint them themselves. I think that's the engine that will allow us to really grow Taunt Battle World as a you know, a large entity, and really our vision of the UFC of the metaverse. And so we're excited about, you know, kind of getting through this next phase and doing that and pushing through to that. We'll talk a little bit about our IP strategy, I'm sure, in a minute, but we'll continue to kind of source those in terms of those larger communities. But in general, that's where we want to take it, you know, by the end of 2024, early 2025.
Well, so you said nobody has 25,000 fighters, but someone in the chat did say that I have 64 fighters. Can I make my own 64-man tournament for streaming?
Yeah.
Is that possible?
I think that's Dave. Yeah, Dave, you can do that, and you can offer your own pricing, and sure, and you'd be a guaranteed winner, actually, which is the good thing. That's the good thing. But I think, in all seriousness, you know, like Dave's a great example, right? He has a lot of fighters and things like that, and we've had to adjust a little bit in terms of how we offer tournament structures and stuff like that. But the good thing about you know, our platform itself is we've built this robust native tournament admin process. You guys have seen it, right? Where we can create different types of tournaments across the board. Like a player like Dave, you know, where it becomes fair is like, I've invested, you know, all this time and effort. I got 64 fighters. Should you give me a good chance to win? Well, that's a great, you know, advantage in a 1,000-person tournament, but that kind of locks people out of, like, you know, and not fair for people in a 128-person tournament, right? But our goal over the next few months is to really refine our tournament schedule, when we've been working really hard at that over the last few months, to make sure we can cover all these groups of people, right? So where, you know, somebody like Dave with the 64 feels like there's value in the tournaments because we're offering enough 1,000-person tournaments where, you know, it gives them a better chance to win, but not an overweighted chance to win, right? And then there's enough for new players who can come in who've never played before, and they're playing only with new players and things like that, and something in the middle, which will probably be our higher end tournaments, where it's like you get one entry, right? You get one fighter, you throw your best fighter in there, and that's what you got. But we're hoping to have a nice, you know, array of things. And, you know, we look at it very similar to daily fantasy. Think about all those different types of daily fantasy tournaments that are running on a daily basis. One entry, multiple entries, first time user. Very similar strategy around that. And it's been, for us, it's been more around a technical, technical, not issue, but hurdle that we have to tackle to make sure we can enable that for everybody.
Sure. So how about we just finish up on a couple of the Battle World questions, and then we'll get onto some of that juicy IP stuff that you alluded to earlier. So we do have another question here asking, will we be able to preset in the temple the defaults for a fighter, or do we have to keep entering it manually for each fighter in every match?
Yeah, great question. We have, I believe, an early version of that built, but yes, it's coming soon. Awesome. So, and for the larger crowd who's maybe new to the game, I'll use the Dave example. He has 64 fighters, so he's got to enter 64. He's got to make 64 sets of strategic decisions for all of those fighters, right? And so, you know, generally speaking, right now, pre-match, So, what he's asking for is something to kind of speed that process up, and we're building something for that, as we speak.
That's on the sort of pre-game strategy side of things.
Yeah.
As far as, yeah. So one more here on Battleworld. What is going to be done about the identical assets of the Yetis? Is it possible to tell which fighter is yours and is yours when you fight an identical fighter?
Yeah, great question. So again, this is more a little context for the newer crowd. Is in the gist of our having 2,500 different fighters, right? There's going to be some fighters that look very, very similar. Maybe they're 90% of their, everything looks the same, and then their left leg is orange instead of purple, right? And so what we're looking at, and again, this is a great, to show how the industry itself and the tech has just grown over the last 2 years. Back when we did some of these collections, you couldn't, dynamic NFT data was very, very hard to execute, right? I think, when we did our last drop, it was on the cusp of being a little bit more easily accessible, but now it's kind of a solved problem. So I think what we're going to end up doing to kind of solve that to some degree is be able to have more dynamic NFT metadata to solve that. So visually, potentially, it might be the same, but there'll be metadata to kind of, or very similar, but there'll be metadata to differentiate a little bit better in general. So that's what we're kind of working kind of towards. But again, when we're printing so many fighters to some degree, and there's only so many variables we can go, there's going to be, fighters are going to look very similar. But in general, I think with dynamic NFT data, we'll be able to solve this problem a little bit better.
Okay, very well answered, I think. So we've got one here this is from one of the other Telegram channels from Ola Orda. Will it be possible to tip people streaming? If so, will it be possible to tip with DevvE and Taunt token?
Was it tip? Was that? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So here's how we look at what we're going to do with Taunt Live in regards to Battle, and then hopefully other game developers, right? If you guys have seen, I'm sure most of you seen a version of the Hunger Games, right? Where, people are watching from home and they're dropping food, airdrops to the fighter or the players and things like that. At a very, very high level, that's where we want to get it to, right? And so when you start to think about, okay, we get into this really large, battle world fight, and it's like we don't know what arena it's going to go. It's going to be crowd choice. So then you can take DevvE, you can take, Taunt token, and then you can vote on what arena they're going to use, because in the game, arenas do affect gameplay, right? So another little tidbit for you. So if the Undeath, which is one of our, like the zombie, is a zombie race, if their home court is in the zombie stronghold, then they're going to get a little bit of buff on some of their attributes. Now, we don't tell you which attributes, but some, right? So you can start to think about, okay, how can we help affect kind of gameplay in a really, positive way for the people we're supporting, or the players we're supporting, or whatever your motivation is. And then in general, take that a bit deeper, start to think about a rule set for a tournament where you get to select what weapon a player has to use, right, as part of the game. Again, all of that will be facilitated by the blockchain, DevvE tokens, and things like that. And then ultimately, when we start to think about, like, okay, well, when creators get a hold of these tools and what they're doing, our goal is for them to monetize, right? And so tips, all of that stuff, will be able to be used, in the utility there would be like everywhere you see, like on Twitch or YouTube. Of course, we're going to do that, but my hope is it's even more interactive than that, right? It's more valuable that the content creators themselves can come up with new ways to, quote unquote, earn those tips versus just handing them out. And everything's gamified at that point. And that's my hope. Is tips is just step one of this, but past that is a lot more.
So I suppose if
that's what's really exciting to me as well.
I'll just say, if you're building the Hunger Games of the metaverse, maybe you're going to have to get one of the fancy hairstyles. All these guys
had. Exactly.
It could be an attribute.
Okay. Right. We'll leave a couple of community questions for now. Maybe we'll move on a bit to what you were talking about earlier in terms of IPM partnerships. Is there anything sort of that you maybe some of your existing community might not be aware of yet, sort of as we're coming up to the Taunt public sale very soon? Things are really starting to gear up for you guys, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. So initially, our strategy has always been, and it's unwavering, and completely believe this, is that if we can get more communities into Taunt Battle Royale as IP, right? We've done a couple smaller ones. We did one with a smaller community called Mad Rabbits. We've done one, I think someone referenced the Yetis, right? We've done these small integrations. We do have combat sports MMA stars in the game already. Uh, uh, Chris Cyborg, Floyd Mayweather, Andy Ruiz are actually playable NFT fighters. So we really look, if we can get to the vision of what Battle World is, we really look at it as a hub of current events and cultural relevance, right? And so where you start to think about, we talk about this all the time, where how Fortnite has been able to hold its position in the gaming world, it's not because it was the first Battle Royale game. It's not because it's, from a game design perspective, not the best designed one, right? They've been able to tap into the culture, and whatever's right. If there's a new Marvel movie out, all the characters are Marvel guys, right? If there's a new, Halo's in there and they're fighting with Dragon Ball Z guys, right? They've got all these communities coming in, and it's pumping life into the game, well past the normal cycle of how long a game can traditionally stay alive, right? And so we look at that the same way, and we're starting with like the Web3 communities and things like that, but hope to expand much farther out than that. But we do have significant partners that will be integrated, as IP, as both playable fighters, in-game items, arenas over the next few months that we're going to announce. We're going to announce a huge one in the next week or two from the meme coin community. And when I say a huge one, I mean one of the biggest, right? And they're going to be.
Who could it be?
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, in general, we hope to keep that strategy going long term. And again, the benefit will become hopefully for not only our community, but then the DevvE blockchain, as people are finding this from other IPs, strong Web3 communities, finding the speed of the DevvE chain, finding Battle World and how fun it is, and how like what we were talking about earlier, this almost another version of the out of home, acquisition process, but that's our goal. And then, this competitive nature, whether it's between certain PFP communities with each other, can drive interest. So that's really what we believe will be the lifeblood of the user acquisition piece, and what our team is really good at.
I can't imagine that's a difficult conversation to have, Jeff. Have you had, imagine going to someone and saying, I'd like to take your content, I'd like to take your community, I'd like to take all of the things that you guys do really well, just add more value for your users. Would you be interested in something like that?
It's a pretty easy value proposition, right? For them, and there's monetization opportunities for them and stuff like that. So, if anybody knows any good ones, right, send them our way, because I think for us, the more is merrier, right? And I think our process now to this point is pretty dialed in terms of being able to get fighters and in-game assets in relatively quickly. So, from our perspective, our hope, again, the focus after the next couple months, and we get through kind of the next couple months, is to really start to throw gasoline on that and get communities in here so they can see the value of both, Battle World, Taunt Live, and the tool sets, and then the DevvE blockchain and all of that. And so, we're really going to start to put the pedal in the, and you guys know who the guys are now, but we have some huge, we couldn't get big. We couldn't get bigger if we wanted to, right? So, it's gonna come soon, and and we're hopefully everybody get the benefit from it in the communities.
Okay, well, I think we've got probably 10 or 15 minutes left, Steve. There's probably a million different questions that I'd like to ask. I know you kind of graciously said that we'd like to do a few more of these, Jeff, but I think we're going to have to hold you to that, because out of our agenda, I think we've managed to cover like maybe a tenth of what we actually plan to discuss. But one of the things I think that everybody wants to hear about, obviously, we've just announced the dev drop today, which I think people are really excited about on our side. Obviously, that's a huge incentive for people of our community to get involved, both with Taunt, what you're doing, and potentially to get involved and buy the public sale. Is there anything that you expect to announce around the game, or around the tokenomics, or around any of that you'd like to share with anybody ahead of the public sale that they may not have picked up on? Or is there anything that you think our community would like to know?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Obviously, with the kind of the baseline stuff that I think that information will start to come out over the next few weeks, like launch pads and exchanges and all of that. I think the teams have been working obviously really hard on getting that together. So there's been some significant movement there, but we're really happy about where we're at right now. I think in terms of our launch partners that are helping both from a marketing perspective and some other items we're really happy about. I think the one thing that I do want to tease today is we believe we will probably have one of the most unique and fun airdrop programs that have ever been executed in Web3. It's going to be a seven-figure, a mid-seven-figure with the dev drop allocation as well on the airdrop programs, and that's really to attract. And most developers won't make an investment like that right on the airdrop side. But because we believe our products are so good and our IP is so good, and we believe that combined with where we're going to go with the DevvE blockchain and all of our launch partners, that people will take that and take that airdrop and really hang around and be retained. We're really happy with how our airdrop program is actually being built right now. I will tease that we have a platform partner right now that's helping us build what we would call what we're calling the Battle World Underground, which will have a set of mini games that are all Battle World branded that are actually tied into the narrative of Battle World. It's called pipeflare.io. If you guys have a minute, go check them out. But they have tens of thousands of DAU. They're probably one of the largest Web3 casual game portals out there. But they're going to help us build something really unique for that airdrop program. And then, with that, kind of airdrop program and it's tied in, that will roll right into kind of the launch, which will roll right into our farm and staking strategy, which will roll right into a bunch of other things that we're kind of tying in, like our tournament schedule and things like that. But, the cool thing about what we're tying together across the board from A to Z, it's all gamified, right? So it's this idea that, the airdrop's gamified. The game is obviously a game. Battle World Underground is going to be gamified. All of these things that kind of tie together into, our farm's going to have a digital collectible components to it as well, where it's tied into in-game assets. So, we're really trying to do the fun factor around all of these things, around the token launches and things like that are generally very transactional. But, we're really trying to add that gamified feature to everything we're doing, so it's fun, right? And that's why we do this.
100%. I think you're going to have probably the best community or the most loved community. You're going to earn yourself some pretty diehard fans, and I'm not talking about maybe a handful. There's going to be thousands of them that are just you're going to earn the respect of a lot of content creators, a lot of players, and a lot of gamers with what you're doing right now. I've seen under the hood, and I'm very impressed.
It's also sort of really in vogue right now with the it used to be play to earn, but now play to airdrop is what a lot of the Web3 games are all pivoted to pretty hard, and that's exactly what you're doing. Just different wording, different form, a little bit, but it's you're very on brand for the whole Web3 space right now, gaming space right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I suppose in the time that we've got left, we should get to all the rest of the community questions, and then we'll give you guys a final note, I guess. So we have one here from Oldie One Kenobi, who I know is listening right now. I've taken a wee look at the Battle World site, but not had enough time to get through it all. The NFTs appear to be sold out about 2 years ago. Looking at the marketplace and a view to grab one, 2 questions. Will there be others available? If so, how can we acquire one? And upon acquiring one, how do we enter the battle?
Yeah, great question. Great question. Great name, by the way, as well. So
I know it's one of my favorites too.
Yeah. So this is the other thing, which was very important for us when we were choosing like a kind of a main blockchain to kind of operate out of, right? Is that we have this vision, if we get all the way to where we want, is basically Battle World's accessible anywhere. So it's cross-platform. So whether you're on your phone, you're on your PC, web, whatever, you can access the fights. And the ease of gameplay plays into that, right? So it's almost like if we went with this kind of simplified formula of gameplay, and we didn't get the maximum distribution at the same time, we're doing everybody a disservice, right? So those things kind of play together to some degree. And so our hope is that in general that in terms of future NFT drops in the short term, that how we built the game is actually we can do an NFT drop anywhere. So we can do it on DevvE chain when it's fully live. We can do it on ETH. We can do it on Binance. We have assets on Polygon. So basically anywhere you go, as long as we drop the assets, you can come in and play the same game. And so for us, the next official NFT and any NFT drop will be on DevvE. To some degree, what fighters are actually going to be on that in that NFT drop is still TBD and things like that. But I promise you, we'll come up with something very, very cool for the DevvE community. But the cool thing is, once we get everything on chain, the only blockchain that can make the data transfer pieces work between all of these other blockchains was DevvE, right? There was not even another option to make where we want to go work, especially, like I said, with the live streaming pieces. Just think about in the world where we're handing out trophies that are actually NFTs that might have some in-game utility down the road in real time to thousands and thousands and thousands of people. Could not make that happen in any other blockchain. If we need to get data back and forth, both write it on a blockchain and get it to a betting partner, in real time, there is no other partner that could actually do that. So that, again, it goes back to who could actually make that go from that perspective. And then you start to think about, okay, well, we need to have every single action that's happening in the game recorded on a blockchain for thousands of thousands. Every punch, every kick, every flamethrower, every jump, all of that, there is no other partner that could actually do that either. So for us to kind of aggregate all of that information from other blockchains, other platforms, and all that other, all of that stuff, conceptually, we didn't have another option, and DevvE was the best one. But that's where we want to go, right? It's cross-platform, it's cross-blockchain, it's cross everything. We're bringing everybody together. Doesn't matter where you're at. But DevvE's kind of the piping that's making all of that go to some degree.
Making the impossible possible.
I didn't pay you to say that, Jeff. That was you've done a better job of summarizing what we do than we do. But yeah, that's a good analogy. We are the piping, and more importantly, I think that from a an opportunity point of view, and again, we haven't really touched on some of the other IP that you guys are developing, and I think we might have to save that now for a later time. But it is just mind-blowing that the conversations we have with people and the conversations that we've been having with you and the opportunities that I think that your technology in general is going to open up, really is kind of significant and indicative of this shift in kind of the adoption of blockchain technology on an enterprise level and a global scale. So, we're really, really excited to be working with you and to sort of see where you go and help you to enable that.
Me too. And I think, earlier, when Ray and I had our early conversations, right? I think what we're trying to do, where we don't want, and everybody says like this on the Web3 gaming side, they don't want it to feel like it's some sort of Web3, integration. You're going to lose a bunch of. I completely agree. But you start to think about on the blockchain side, it's the same thing, right? Where it's like, how do you scale, a blockchain for millions of people when, there's, less than 10,000, 5,000 Solidity developers in the world, right? That's like, you start to think about that. It's like, well, how is that even possible, right? That's just lip service, because it's impossible to get to where you're talking about with that small of a pool. But, when you're talking about, okay, well, you guys have built an infrastructure that any developer can develop on in the world. Well, that's how you get to, service 1 billion people, how you service, a whole industry, right? And so we're thinking that right there, which is the core piece, aligns really, really well, where it's like, okay, we want to onboard thousands of people. We don't want to have this blocker of, okay, if we're going to put it on chain, we're going to have a significant user experience issue, right? And so like that right there aligns us really, really well for the future in terms of, we want massive scale. That's where we want to go with this. And how do we get there with it, whether it's live streaming, whether it's, how you guys have set up the blockchain on your side. It's not about, a short-term, hey, let's turn a profit or have a really good 3 months and everybody's high-fiving and you won't see us again. It's more about, okay, let's put the long-term piping in, and then over time we'll get to where we want to go.
Amazing. Yeah, no, and that's a great summary. Okay, Jeff. Well, unless there's anything else that you wanted to cover off, Steve, I was going to
Yeah,
pretty much leave it there and wrap up.
2 more community questions we'll get through really quick.
Yep.
One was from Git, who's been part of our community for a long time. Are there any plans to license the Taunt platform to any other live streaming services such as Twitch? And obviously, as I understand, it's really just a browser extension. So maybe some context behind that would be really,
Yeah,
really
yeah,
great.
yeah. Great question. So we do have plans on that. Obviously, they have their own. Same thing with a Google extension. They have their own things that we have to service. But our goal again is to bring our tech to wherever the content creators live. So if they want, right now how Taunt Live works is we have our own kind of native setup and admin panel that any game developer can use on their own native website for streams. So that's how it kind of works right now and how it works at that role. But the idea is we can kind of bottle and package all of our tech up, and then it could be put in an extension. It could be in a Twitch extension. It could be put in a Google extension. In theory, if we wanted to do a standalone site that streams and we could put all of that there and we can aggregate people, we could do that as well. So yes, our goal is to get it to as many hands as possible where they're at, and then we kind of go from there.
Okay, very good. And so the last question here before we sign off, I guess, I think it's probably the most important question that's been asked all night is who would win in a fight between Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris?
Whew. I'm an Asian dude. I'm going Bruce Lee. Sorry.
I would go Bruce Lee. Oh, I don't know. I've got a bit of redhead in me as well, so maybe.
Yeah.
I'm going every Chuck Norris meme would disagree with you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a tough one though, right?
You kind of look like Chuck Norris.
I don't know if you're talking to me or Davin there. I'm not quite sure.
No, it's definitely you. Okay, well, on that note, I think we'll leave it there. And guys, if you're watching this live, or even if you're watching this again, in your own time and convenience, please make sure that you obviously check out Taunt, check out all of their channels, join their channels, encourage people to join their channels. Jeff, the team, and everybody else are really, really happy to answer questions, and we'll filter what we can in there as well. There's lots of news and updates coming around both what's going on the game side, on the Taunt Network side, on the sales side, and again, all of our channels will be filled with regular updates as well. Please kind of we've been talking for an hour, but there's been some absolute gold that we've discussed here today. There's more to come. Have a re-listen, have a rewatch. Just listen to some of the things that Jeff said, and potentially think about what that might mean in terms of how you might look at monetizing, how you might look at your content journey, your Web3 journey, and how potentially large partners might look at theirs. And on that note, thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Jeff, very much for making the time, and thank you, Steve. I know it's like ridiculous o'clock in the morning.
Thanks, guys.
But thank you again, and we are very much looking forward to hosting another AMA with you. Likewise, thank you all for watching and joining us. And on that note, I will leave it to Steve to wrap up, and we will speak to you all very soon.
Thanks, everybody.
See you soon, guys. Thank you.